Hey guys, Miss Poulin here, and for this lesson we're learning about story elements. So the key question you want to take away here is what makes a good story, right? And the important thing to know is that there's not just one aspect of the story that makes it so great, there's multiple aspects, right? So I composed this graphic of a puzzle, right? Because think of a story as a puzzle itself. There's many pieces to the puzzle, like there's many pieces to a story. You need all of them to make the story complete. Without one, it would be incomplete and it wouldn't make sense. So puzzle piece number one is every piece is important. Every piece serves a purpose and contributes to the story flow. Number two, characters, people or animals in the story, right? There could be multiple characters to the story. Many of the books that you probably read or the stories that you read have multiple, like probably more than 4 characters in the story. Setting, the where of the story, time and location. Location is like the easy one, whether a story takes place in your house, the park, etc. The possibilities are endless. Time, that's also part of setting, right? It's not just like where you physically are, but where you are in like time frame. Like, does it take place in the past, the present, or the future? Or does it take place at like a watch time? Like, I'm going to the park, that's the location. At 4, that's the time. Problem. This is a big one, right? It's kind of like why we're reading the story. It pertains to the characters. The main issue or struggle that the character faces in the story. Usually presented early on, and there can be multiple problems, right? Because if you have a story that has many characters, it's probably making a good guess that those characters have different problems, regardless of whether they solve it together or not. However, just know that the problems refer to the characters. The characters are having the problems. Key events, actions that occur in the story, right? So when you think of key events, key meaning important, imperative, the need to know of the story. And you know their key events as if you were to read a story and then your teacher asks you to write a summary of the story. They're not asking for every nitty-gritty detail of the story, right? They're asking for the big things, right? So for example, if you're reading a story and in chapter 9, Timmy went to the bathroom. Okay, that happened in the story, but it's not a big deal, right? It doesn't really contribute to the text or the story or like the development of the characters. It's okay, it happened, but it's not a big deal. So you wouldn't want to include that in the summary, right? The last one is solution. I like where this is placed in the puzzle. I like where it's like last because the solution more than likely happens last in the story. It's usually like the last couple of chapters, right? It's the way the characters solve the problem. So it's reflecting on characters and it's reflecting on the problem, right? So the problem is toward the beginning of the story, the solution is toward the end. It wouldn't make sense if the solution was at the beginning of the story because we found out like what the solution was in chapter 2 and you had like 20 more chapters to read. You're kind of like, okay, so what's the point of me reading the rest of the story, right? Solution comes at the end. Here's the big example. I mentioned Harry Potter, right? So Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, which is J.K. Rowling's first Harry Potter book in that series. So, characters. We have Harry Potter, we have Ron, Hermione, Snape, Voldemort. There's so many characters in this story, but those are the big ones, right? And there are animals in the story that also develop and have names. Setting. The where of the story. Time and location. Location, Hogwarts, also takes place in England. The Quidditch field, etc. Time, meaning, I think it takes place in like present day or like mid-90s or late 90s. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I believe that is true. There's also parts of the story where it takes place at nighttime, day, midday, morning, you name it. Problem. In this particular Harry Potter book, the problem is that someone stole the Sorcerer's Stone and it's up to Harry Potter and his friends to figure out who it was. Because that's a big deal. Key events. Harry Potter learns that there's this magic school. Other key events are he plays the game of Quidditch, which I think is really fun, and he learns how to use a wand. Solution. Harry and his friends figure out who really stole the Sorcerer's Stone. Voldemort. And the stone is returned back to its proper place. That's the solution. And the other solution is that the school year ends and there's going to be another school year for the kids. All right. The other example is Lion King. I know that most of you probably have seen The Lion King because it's a Disney classic. If you haven't, please watch it. You must watch it. Anyway, characters. We have Simba, Timon, Pumbaa, Zazu, Mufasa, Scar. A lot of characters in that one too. Setting. The grand setting is that it takes place in Africa. They also mentioned Pride Rock as a setting, which is where like all the lions and the other animals live. Time frame. I don't know like where on a timeline it takes place. However, there's night scenes, there's day scenes, there's morning scenes, there's sunsets. Problem. Scar takes over Pride Rock after Mufasa sadly dies, and like he pretty much ruins the land for everybody, right? Key events. Mufasa dies. That's the tragedy of the story. Simba learns to like live without his dad. He meets Timon and Pumbaa, who show him a new way of life, Hakuna Matata, etc. Solution refers back to the problem and the other characters. Simba and the gang go back to Pride Rock and take it over from Scar, and everything is happy again. The grass is greener, and everyone is seemingly happy. So I hope you enjoyed this breakdown of story elements presented in narrative writing and reading, and stay tuned for the task.